Welcome back, everyone, to Bite Size Career Strategies. With me today is Ellen Steverson of Starting Block Career Services, and I am Nancy Siegel of Solutions for the Workplace. Today, we're going to talk about the inevitable difficult colleagues that each of us face. If life were perfect, we would all work with employees that we get along with. But sometimes it happens that there are difficult people with whom we have to interact on a daily basis. So we're going to talk a little bit about some strategies that you can employ to minimize the difficulties and de-escalate what could turn into confrontations. So, Ellen, what do you think is the most important thing that we need to do when we are dealing with difficult colleagues?
Thank you, Nancy. The most important thing really is staying calm and remaining calm throughout this conversation. If you have a coworker coming to you and they are irate, they are yelling, they are emotional, do not mirror that emotion back to them. Stay calm. And really, that really is very important, probably the number one thing I would say. And in this conversation today, we're talking about difficult coworkers. So I think that is very important, is to stay calm. And if you don't stay calm, you really can't do what? You can't hear them either. So what would you say is an important part of it, Nancy?
Well, thank you for that lead in, Ellen. So staying calm, I agree with you, is critical. And the second most important thing, of course, is to listen. And when I'm talking about listening, I'm talking about active listening.
Right.
And when we are actively listening to people, we are looking at them. We're giving them nonverbal cues by nodding our heads that we're paying attention. We are not playing with our phones or clicking in the background trying to finish our emails. And the other thing that we're doing, which is part of active listening, is asking clarifying questions in a calm way. So, we've mentioned staying calm, we've mentioned listening, because if you don't listen, you can't really understand the issue. So, what else do you think is important, Ellen?
Well, I definitely think the listening is important because people who are angry typically want to be acknowledged, and you can't acknowledge somebody if you're ignoring them. So again, acknowledge them, but then also realize now is not the time to start spitting out compliance to a policy, or you would do things differently because this is the way it should be done. Again, if you start doing that, you are not acknowledging the way they're feeling or anything like that, right, Nancy?
You're absolutely right, and you're being disrespectful.
Absolutely.
And if you want to have an ongoing relationship with your colleagues, which we need, whether we like them or not, you need to treat people with respect. You need to not be judgmental.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Absolutely. You need to use I statements. All of those kinds of things, I think, are critical. And being open to the fact that other people might have different views on how something could be done.
That's
and as
right.
long as the issue is not life-threatening, you need to be a little open to ways other than what you personally might prefer.
Right. And especially when it's a colleague that, this behavior is not common. We really never know what's going on in somebody's life. Chances are if they're acting a little unreasonable, they could be feeling some sort of vulnerability or fear. And that's what you're trying to figure out when you're listening to them. One of the things I would say is, don't start arguing with people. When they're coming to you, you might feel the need to be defensive and argue back. please don't do that. Remember, the number one rule is stay calm, and number rule two was listen. So that's how you want to say that, right, Nancy?
And no touching.
Oh, absolutely.
No touching. And I'm not just talking about poking at someone, let alone fisticuffs, but
Mhm.
even touching somebody in an effort to calm them down. That
Mhm.
is an invasion of personal space.
Mhm.
And there is no reason why you need to touch another person in the workplace.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. You think you're just patting somebody on the arm slightly and they see it in their mind as you attack them. So don't do that. Don't pat them on the shoulder, arm, nothing. Totally agree. Stand back a little bit and let them vent. Sometimes I see people and I hear them promising things that they really can't do because they don't know what else to say to make the person happy. So they're saying, I'll take care of this, when in reality, they can't.
I see that as well, Ellen, and I think it is important not to commit to doing something that you have no authority to do or you don't have the ability to do. One,
Absolutely.
one strategy you might use is to recognize the issue and then say to someone, well, let's figure out together how we can solve this problem.
Right. Yeah, I'm all for the thank you for letting me know. Let's sit down and pick a date tomorrow or Wednesday that we can revisit this conversation so that they feel heard, you've heard them, and you can come back the next day and have a good conversation. Dealing with somebody who's irate, who's emotional, you don't want to mirror that image and you want to be able to get through the moment, actually.
Yes, getting through the moment unscathed, but still coming across as empathic
Mm-hmm.
and open and collegial is
Right,
what it's all about.
right.
And, to solve a problem, you may have to go back and do some research.
Absolutely.
Right.
And one other thing on the cuff here that I would add is, please, when you have somebody who comes to you and they're emotional, please don't turn around and tell 20 other employees about what just happened. Again, let's talk about how you could de-stress from that situation rather than going telling everybody else in the office what just happened, because that is really unprofessional. You
It's
know,
also disrespectful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. These are usually unplanned. You had no idea somebody's going to walk in your office and they're, yelling or whatever, or you can crying, maybe, who knows. You have now made it through. You've calmed me down enough. We have an appointment for tomorrow. What do you recommend people do, Nancy?
So I think we should acknowledge for ourselves that, that was stressful
Mhm.
and we need to decompress. So, how can we do that? You can take a walk around the block.
Yep, go get a drink at the water cooler, go back to your office and kind of pat yourself on the back for handling it well, but not gossiping. That's wrong.
Gossiping is always wrong, but
Mhm.
it's very tempting
Right, it is. It is very tempting. So don't do that.
because
Mhm.
I think it's natural for us to want allies to reinforce that we're right. And it's
Mhm.
not about deciding I'm right and you're wrong. It's about solving the problem together.
Mhm. Yes, another thing to think about for all those listeners out there, if you are in a supervisory role or a leadership role where somebody could come to you, or even if you're just a peer and people come to you often to vent, we can't guarantee that you are in private offices and no one hears it. So again, what I would recommend is that you think about how you would handle this situation today so that if it ever occurs and then somebody comes up and goes, oh my God, I saw Billy Bob was in your office yelling and screaming, tell me what happened, you have a good response and then you're able to handle this situation. So think ahead. If this has never happened to you, yay, but it could. If you're in any type of working team, this could happen. So how would we handle that? You
So
know?
I think actually that's a great point, Ellen. I think there's a couple things here. In the era of open plan offices,
Mm-hmm.
it's not impossible to think that somebody might come and start to unload in your open plan cubicle.
That's right.
And one of the first things you might want to do is, in fact, to say, you know what, this sounds like a more complex conversation. Let's take it to this conference room.
Excellent. Great idea. I agree with you.
Right. And then if somebody wants to, gossip about it afterwards, I do agree. We need to be prepared with, that was just between Susie Q and me. Everything is fine. Nothing to be concerned about.
That's right. And I think, that will show leadership skills way more than gossiping at any point. You really shouldn't be doing that. And, and I think that's a totally appropriate response of they're going to go on and on about somebody, cut them short and just say, yes, it looked like Mary was having a moment there. It's been handled. Everything is good. Don't worry about it. Go back to project XYZ and redirect the employee. Don't encourage it around the office at all.
Right. So these things happen. They're fairly common. And people bring their personal lives to work. Oftentimes, the issue has nothing to do with work. It's just work is a good excuse, and it might be a place they feel they can let loose, which maybe they can't do at home. Right. I don't want anybody playing psychologist.
Absolutely.
Nobody is trained to be a therapist. We have to handle the conduct that we see, and we need to do so calmly by listening and making sure that we are respectful.
Totally agree, Nancy. And I'm glad we brought up this topic today, because this is another matter that I think anyone, again, that works in an open office or with multiple people, you really should plan for this. It's a great management topic at any time to talk to your managers and things like that, so you are prepared just in case it ever happens. So I'm glad we talked about this today, because just about everybody has a story about a difficult person in their lives. But let's all be a little kinder, cut people some slack, and really make sure we're staying focused on developing into the leaders we want to be.
Great way to end. That was Ellen Steverson, Starting Block Career Services. I am Nancy Siegel, Solutions for the Workplace, and we will see you on our next Bite-Sized Career Strategies podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please visit Nancy or Ellen's website for additional information about our services, a free tip sheet which highlights our discussion today, and be sure to tune in to our next podcast, which will be posted soon. Thank you.